I think sports in general is this real uniting force in anywhere in the world, but hockey specifically in Canada is a sport that kind of brings everyone together. The old adage, the old tradition of getting around your TV on a Saturday night to watch Hockey Night in Canada, it's a tradition.
I think when I was a kid watching Hockey Night in Canada, you're a fan like everyone else. Like with Saturday nights, the Leaf games would come on and I'd be, all excited. It was like my favorite day of the week and favorite time and spending time with my family.
You can call it like a passion. The one thing you look forward to on the weekends is playing hockey.
There was a little cul-de-sac and out on the street, and we would always play hockey out there. Everybody would just kind of borrow, steal equipment just to go and play hockey.
There were very few colored people playing hockey when I grew up playing it when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. It was kind of just me and my teammates, and I was kind of the only one that looked visibly different than everybody else.
Well, I can remember quite a few times, when I was a kid and I would be playing hockey, where somebody would call me a nigger. And back then, growing up where I grew up, when somebody calls you a name, you go after them. There was one incident, funny enough, where somebody at a face-off at a national championship just turned to me and called me Blackie, Blackie, Blackie. Well, the lights kind of went out, forgot where I was, and the next thing you know, that person was kind of going out in an ambulance.
Growing up, it was very rare to find someone, I'm sorry to say this, that wasn't white playing.
I was not accepted amongst the lures of the hockey society because, again, my parents were different and I was different, and it felt uncomfortable as I grew up, and it continued to happen.
Anybody who feels discriminated against or who feels threatened or uncomfortable is because they're in the prime of their game, and they don't want to be discriminated. Take a knee, there goes my career. Take a stance, and next thing you know, they're off the team.
They've been told, don't you dare go to line, don't you ever dare break the mold. It's been said that way for literally decades. And the problem is that basketball said, yeah, we like that diversity. We like it because at the top level of these different sports, you have in basketball and baseball and football, presidents, coaches, GMs who are black, or in some cases who are female. You don't have that in hockey. You don't have a black GM in NHL. You don't have a female GM in hockey. It doesn't happen. So it's the old guard telling them, hey, if you don't act the same like the rest of us, you're out of here, you're gone. And it's too bad.
When you're talking about the likes of Subban, he's got lots of different things going against him. Number one is that he is black, and he's very black. A lot different than, say, a Jerome McGinley. Number two is he's very sure of himself. But the number three thing that probably is going against him more than anything is that he's educated. And that, to me, intimidates a lot of people out there.
We gotta somehow break out of that mold because hockey wants to grow. Embrace our differences. Embrace the fact you got PK Subban out there being flashy and being a proud black man. Embrace the fact you got JT Brown standing for black rights. Other sports leagues love that kind of stuff. Stand up and make an impact.
Great hockey skills, abilities are overshadowed by those things. And that's pretty unfortunate because if it were somebody else that was white, a lot of those characteristics would be overlooked because he's such a good hockey player.
Don't be afraid to go out there and be unique. It's what makes sports great in life, and hockey's gotta learn that sooner or later. It has to.
I think hockey's the one sport that's still behind on its diversity, and I don't know where the blame kind of goes through. I don't think it's a country-specific thing. I don't think it's a sports-specific thing. I just think the opportunities afforded to minorities that immigrate here are just less than those who have grown up here and have a financial backing. Hockey's an expensive sport and it takes a lot to play it. I was very fortunate to be able to. My parents had a backing in Canada for a few years before my sisters and I were born, so they had some savings and allowed us to use them in the way that we felt appropriate. But a lot of people don't have those opportunities, and a sport as expensive as hockey is always going to get cut out. And unfortunately, it's generally minority populations that get left to the side when these sports come around.
They have to make it more affordable. They have to work towards making it more socio-economically inclusive, because you are going to end up becoming sort of a rich kid sport, and that's not really what the sport is about. If you look at the grassroots of hockey, it's definitely, from a blue-collar standpoint, was where the large mass of players were from, and now it's turning into much more. It has to be a family with professional parents and people who have a fair bit of money, and I think that's something they have to work towards if they're going to grow the game and have retention of players.
It's who you know. I'm seeing so many more opportunities going to pros kids, pros cousins. It's just all the opportunities just seem to be going that way. I'm sure that there's countless of stories of people who are missing out on opportunities because they got bumped in on this person and bumped out.
I think when you just look in North America at the retention levels in hockey are lower than in other sports like soccer or basketball, and it's because there's a huge cost involved. I mean, it's thousands of dollars a year to have your child playing competitive hockey I can speak to at least in Toronto and in Ontario. That's a big commitment, and the time commitment. So when you're looking at thousands of dollars and all the time being put in, some families just don't have the ability to do that.
Now we do have youth programs and grassroots programs that provide equipment and ice time and different things to help kids if they do want to get involved. So there's a lot less excuses now than there were when I was starting to play, which is a great thing. And you know, hopefully we can continue to you know, build the game and get more people involved. I mean, I think that there's a lot of players from different parts of the world. That's what makes the NHL so cool, is that, you know, not just black players, but, you know, Indian, Asian, you know, people from Europe, you know, different parts of the world. So we embrace everybody, and that's the cool thing about our game, is that everybody's allowed to play.
In Canada alone, we have tremendous multiculturalism, and one of the things that we see in Canada is when new Canadians come from various other countries from around the world, the one thing where they feel that it unites them is by playing hockey. Whether they watch hockey, they learn hockey, they buy merchandise and they wear it, they talk about it on the school ground. We're seeing more diversity from that perspective. And those young kids do see themselves in playing in the NHL one day. So they need to be able to have that opportunity. And when it comes from the top down, that change is absolutely 100% required.
This is an opportunity that our voices are heard loud and clear, that we do have a place in the hockey world. We do have a place on this ice.
What I liked about this thing, coming here tonight and watching the girls play, was the kids in the stands, the young girls in the stands. When I brought Minot to Tampa and she played, all the girls and all the women wanted to come to the game. And out of that, I'm sure I got 1,000 girls or women that got interested in hockey. I had 3 daughters myself. They loved hockey, but they never played it because there was no chance for them then. And in that respect, it's gotten a lot better. And that's beautiful. I think that's what we're all about that, you know?
Hockey, I think, you know what, being a kid from Edmonton, hockey is in your blood. It's in your culture to want to play hockey or be around hockey. And I mean, being an Edmonton Oilers fan, it is a team that at one time had 5 black players, from Mike Greer, Anson Carter, Sean Brown, Joaquin Gage, and of course, Grant Fuhr. So naturally, being in a hockey background, being, you know, a black in Edmonton, you were just drawn to it with those guys you watched playing hockey, you know, who looked like you.
And it's funny, when I was a kid, because you kind of identify with people who look like you and go, oh yeah, maybe I could be there one day, and you identify. And there was a gentleman, John Saunders, a gentleman I used to watch when I was younger, and he started out at City TV in Toronto, and then he went down to ESPN in the States, and he was an amazing broadcaster and a real gentleman. He was someone I always sort of wanted to aspire to become, and I had a chance to work with him a few times eventually later on in his career and in the middle of my career, which was really exciting for me.
Kids need role models, and I think they gravitate towards people that look similar to them or have some sort of resemblance to them in whatever nature it is. I try to have fun when I broadcast, yes, but I'm also a minority broadcaster, so I try to bring a couple different elements to my work every single day. I'm not saying, because of my job, I'm specifically a role model for minority kids, but I think it gives them a belief that they can also do it despite the obstacles that they may perceive to be around them.
It's really important, and it happens to me a lot. A lot of times, people of color come up to me and say, hey, I'm really glad you're on TV and representing, and you want the shows, especially a show like Hockey Night in Canada, to reflect the demographics of the society that watches. And a true representation, there should be more females, there should be visible minorities, there should be everyone feeling like they're represented in the show, especially a show that takes on such a significant social importance like Hockey Night in Canada. So I feel it's great that I can represent for certain people out there who look a certain way or grew up in a certain way, and I think that's fantastic, and it should be such a diverse, inclusive situation, and that's what it really is right now.
A lot of you kids out there that whether we accept it or not look up to us and see us as role models, and I think it's just important to do all the right things. I think you take it on as a responsibility, and that's what comes with the job. So just try to do your part, and just be a good role model.
It's great because currently right now we see a lot of excitement in China with building hockey in a major growing market. And that also provides another opportunity to continue to grow hockey around the world.
There's something to be said for that. There's a whole marketplace of billion plus people, close to 2 billion people in China and throughout Asia. I think the Olympics will really help the NHL in that regard. In 2022, when the Olympics are in Beijing, and it will be a spectacle, and China will have a hockey team there, and I think it will be a big new fan base, and the door will be open to really help globalize the game of hockey.
Ideally, you would think it would be those in power right now, but I think it's going to be the next generation. It'll be the next broadcasters coming up. It'll be the prospects, like myself and other reporters who are young, be it, the ones who are young, black, Asian, Spanish, women, to make that change. Go out there. Don't be afraid to write about it. Don't be afraid to go on YouTube and rant about it.
Edmonton did what Calgary couldn't do. Win in Anaheim.
What do you have to lose? Don't be afraid to make some change. If you don't make change, the status quo will be the exact same. Take a risk. You know what? If you fail, you fail. But don't be afraid to make some change. Don't look back on it in 3-5 years and say, oh, I wish I commented on Josh Ho-Sang. I wish I commented on JT Brown getting death threats. Don't be afraid to go and say something, because if you don't say anything, you'll make zero change.
I think the media plays a role in making people aware of what's going on within the context of a sport, but I think there are so many organizations out there right now that are trying to help minorities in hockey. There's people who, with new immigrant families, make them play hockey. There's an organization set out to do stuff like that just so they can experience things that other people don't, particularly get to experience.
I think we just allowed 20,000 just even refugees into the country, never mind immigrants into the country. So with that being said, we have to teach immigrants, refugees that are coming into our country how to play the game of hockey. And so, that being said, the old boys network, the old schooling of it being, an all boys or an old boys club, has got to go out the door, because we won't have hockey, because we won't have a grassroots.
I was worried for a while that we were losing it. I really was worried about that. But it's coming back in strides and leaps and bounds. And I think that's important.
It's definitely getting better. I think more and more people are accepting that everybody is kind of the same, and kids specifically have the same kind of equality in terms of the sport abilities when they all start out. So again, it comes down to, I think, some financial situations, and I think there's more being done to ensure that minority families get the same opportunities despite the financial sufferings that they may have. And so I feel like we're on an upward climb in that sense, and I just think obviously more and more has to be done.
They just love the sport, no different than how Canadians love the sport. So they've adapted to Canadian tradition, and probably not by default, but by wanting to probably engage in the Canadian culture. So I think that any immigrant that's already latched on to the game of hockey, and I know a ton, that they're just loving it, embracing it. So as they start to go through the system, I hope and I pray that people can overlook their prejudices and just look at the kid for the skills.
What's kept me going? The fact that one day I know there will be change. Because eventually the old guard will go away, the old guard will pass through, and eventually we will have the young people who they'll be the main voices.
Certain people after their careers, they'll come out and they'll talk about it, what happened. You know, hopefully people give them that opportunity, like yourselves, to go and seek out the truth.